Tomorrow is the 57th anniversary of Africa Day. The African Union had ambitious plans for the year 2020 to silence the guns and to restore peace and security across the continent. But COVID-19 has disrupted the continental body's program, adding that an additional unanticipated burden. We look back at the history of the AU, this year's proposed plans and the adaptations in the light of the coronavirus.
Africa Day commemorates the establishment of the Organization of African Unity. It was founded in 1963 by the likes of Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah, Tanzania's Julius Nyerere, and Emperor Haile Selassie of Ethiopia. The aim was to create a body that could unite African countries. In 2002, the OAU was disbanded in favor of the African Union, which was chaired by the South African president then, Thabo Mbeki. And now in 2020, South Africa is at the helm again. The vision for the year, working towards ending conflict on the continent. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected Africa.
Although the virus has affected both developed and developing countries, it is the poor who suffer the most. The pandemic has highlighted the dangerous and growing inequality that exists between countries and within them. The healthcare systems of many countries are struggling to cope. Some have been weakened by underfunding and neglect. Others are under pressure because they were designed to serve the select few. The pandemic has devastated the livelihoods of millions of people in many countries. The global recovery depends on our ability to accept the reality that this virus will be with us for some time and that we need to prepare to adapt accordingly.
Events like the extraordinary summits of the African Continental Free Trade Area and silencing of the guns have been postponed indefinitely. President Cyril Ramaphosa, as the chairperson, will deliver the keynote address under the theme, The Africa We Want, as well as Prepare, Protect, Prosper. A special Africa Day benefit concert will also take place online. Sophie Mkwena, SABC News, Johannesburg.
For more on why we celebrate Africa Day, I'm joined on the line by Advocate Sipho Mantula, researcher at the Thabo Mbeki School of Public and International Affairs at the University of South Africa. Advocate, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the Globe.
Evening, my brother and Jumbo Africa.
Is the theme of silencing the guns still relevant amidst the continental and the global pandemic of COVID-19? Some were even suggesting, that it has been quite ambitious.
No, that is quite true that this theme, as you have raised, it was mooted in 2013 and finalized in 2016 in Zambia. But my dear son of the soil, let me take you back, Simpiwe, to 1963 when one of the founding fathers, Haile Selassie, when he spoke about the unity, that what Africa needs as well is unity. He said that Africa is today at a mid-course, is in transition of Africa of yesterday to the Africa of tomorrow. So it is critical as we are looking on this task of ending wars in Africa and silencing the guns. We have to take cognizance that we silence even the minds that are plotting these conflicts in the continent. Remember that, Simpiwe, that these conflicts and these wars are being linked as well with the exploitation of the natural resource. They are even perpetuating poverty levels in the continent. As well, they are crippling the health infrastructures. So the conflicts in the continent as well have an agenda that in some instances, one will say the hidden hands or the hidden faces that are part of the African conflicts are mostly foreign countries, are mostly multinationals. So one will say that the member states have to take into cognizance how do they deal as well, Simpiwe, with the creation of the small ammunition, because you see, silencing of guns, it includes even dealing with your own armament sectors. How do you regulate now the issue of manufacturing of weapons? Do Africa still need nuclear weapons? Do Africa still need weapons to fight different battles or even struggles? So it is important if one looks at this theme, despite that we have a global disruptor called COVID-19, and it is a mammoth task for the current chair, which is even South Africa.
Well, the African Union Agenda 2063 promises shared prosperity, it promises unity, integration, freedom and expanded horizons for the youth and the women of Africa, and the freedom from fear and disease. Are the member states, Advocate, fulfilling those promises, you think?
You know, it is simply one, if has to give an audit and the barometer, one will say Africa Day shall come, but member states are not doing enough. You know, earlier, the inset of Sister Sophie was talking about the Africa free trade. How do we achieve integration if the trade is only amongst the superpowers or is among the elites, when the ordinary people in the border-to-border relations are not being taken care of? If we want to be free from diseases, why are we still having influx of your Ebola, your HIV, even your latest coronavirus in the continent, where we have already surpassed 100,000? And if one looks at the issue even around the shared prosperity that you have mentioned in Agenda 2063, how many member states have even made sure that their own nationals, they know what is Agenda 2063 it is all about in its phases, by the way, Simpiwe, because others won't be alive even in 2063, some of those member states, heads of state. So it is critical that the youth and the women of today are able to look at what is this Agenda 2063 it is all about. If one looks at 1963, when the OAU was formed almost 57 years ago. And now when you look at this agenda, when it was launched in 2013, coincidentally by the then the chairperson of the AU, Mayor Dlamini Zuma, you will understand that this agenda was supposed to be popularized by member states, but we only hear about it and read about it only during Africa Month, which is a serious indictment to the member states as well as universities. How far have we been teaching as well and researching on the models of this Agenda 2063 in all its facets? Because we are on aspiration 5, by the way, because the Africa we want, it must be a peaceful Africa, but it must start in our neighborhoods and in our communities.
Advocate, do you think a Congolese or a South Sudanese or a Zimbabwean or a Nigerian actually care about celebrating Africa's diversity at a time where they can't even understand what led them to the difficulties that they're currently facing?
Definitely, it is not a celebration that they can look forward to, but there is a context and a history for it. As you are saying, Simpiwe, I am looking back at the issue of people who are stranded in the borders, people who are coming from different countries. As you will understand, people from Burundi, Congo, the way you have mentioned. But remember that the notion of celebrating or commemorating Africa Liberation Day, it is important even with this misnomer of saying Africa Day, but we know very well that the liberation of the continent, it was not an event, it's a process. If one does not look critically on the liberation of this continent, it was in many phases, whether politically, economically, but you are still in that fringe, in that frail of saying, but are we free culturally? Are we free economically? Because the health infrastructures that we are now finding ourselves into, and our own communities are finding ourselves into, it is because of the mismanagement and the appropriation of funds by many African heads of state post the liberation, simply because some of our communities cannot be found to be wanting for not even being aware of this Africa Liberation Day or being aware of the struggles that have been waged. And like I've said earlier, the struggles are still continuing, and those pockets of struggles, they need immediate response from the leaders of their different communities.
Now, the COVID-19 response fund that was launched and the ailing health infrastructure and its response to traditional medicine since Madagascar has been consistent that its tonic is the real deal. What do you make of, the reactions to this particular tonic and the rejections thereof?
Wow, interestingly, you see, simply we have seen a young man coming from the ranks of being just an ordinary DJ, Andre Rajolina being the president of Madagascar, pushing Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus from WHO by signing a confidential clause. But when you look at this COVID response fund, it's critical, as again on your insight, tomorrow you are aware that there will be different celebrations to raise funds. So it is important that we don't look at raising the funds only to look at the ailing health infrastructure, but to look at the funds of how do we even deal with our different communities of dealing with this traditional medicine research, because one can see that even South Africa is pushing, UKZN, KwaZulu-Natal province, and our Ministry of Higher Education is going to be embarking on a joint research, because it is critical that African traditional medicine or African health should not be undermined or should not be underrated, because the issue it is that, yes, it is not the cure for this COVID-19, because Africa never even created COVID-19. So it is critical that we look at our supplements in the continent. But what is key, it is how this response committee or fund, how it will be managed, because you will understand that from Southern Africa, we are having Wiseman Nkutla, who is part of that, because we must understand simply that even if we are raising funds for COVID-19, before COVID-19, there were many challenges that were facing Africa, and the issue of Madagascar, it is a case to be looked into critically as well, rather than to be waiting for the Western vaccine.
All right, Advocate, thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated.